So in this video, I'll talk about the history, its origin, and also how you can win the Nobel Prize. So what are your chances of winning the Nobel Prize? Okay, first thing first, the Nobel Prize was founded by Alfred Nobel, a Swedish wealthy businessman and also inventor. So Alfred Nobel is known for inventing dynamite that is used in gunpowder and also in modern weaponry today. So in 1888, when his brother Ludwig died, there was an obituary in the newspaper, and the newspaper thought that it was Alfred who was dead. So the headline was, "The Merchant of Death is dead." So Alfred, reading his own obituary, was very, very shocked. So he decided to donate most of his wealth, and that's how the Nobel Prize was founded. So today the Nobel Prize is given in 6 categories. There's physics, medicine, chemistry, and peace and literature, and economics. Only Peace Prize is given by Norwegian government, and the rest are awarded by the Swedish Academy. And how much do you get in terms of cash prize? Let's find out. Okay, so the winner of Nobel Prize gets 10 million Swedish krona, which roughly is about $1.1 million, or about 1 million euro, or 880,000 pounds. That's quite a lot of money. So as you know, I make videos and I get some money from YouTube. I roughly get about $100 a month. So let me check how many years do I have to work to get that kind of money. So $100 per year is 1,200. So divided by 1,200. That's my 1,200 per year I get from YouTube by making videos. So yeah, I have to work about 954 years to get the same amount a Nobel Prize winner gets. Okay, yeah, it's still doable. I have to work another how many years? 953 years? Anyway, let's start talking about the past winners, and then at the end I'll tell you how you can win. So maybe there's still a chance for me to win a Nobel Prize at some point. So it started in 1901. So as you can see, in the first few years, they were given to a lot of poets. In the beginning, I think the Nobel Prize was given to writers of idealism. Realist writers did not get it. For example, Chekhov didn't get a Nobel Prize. Tolstoy, who died in 1910, so some of the best novelists of the time who were writing in a realist and modernist tradition didn't get it. Even Proust didn't get it. So the first on the list that I know is Rudyard Kipling. Well, I read 2 of his books. Kim, which is a longer novel, and then The Man Who Would Be King. It's a short story. The first woman, Swedish. Okay, I don't know any of them. Okay, so the first Asian to win is Tagore. So Tagore was writing in English and Bengali. And at the moment, actually, I'm reading his complete work of Tagore. So it's got his essays, his poems, and his novels and short stories. Okay, who else is next? Okay, so 1917, I know Henrik Pontoppidan because I reviewed his novel Lucky Pear. It's a great novel, and you can watch my video if you like. Okay, 1920, I've got Knut Hamsun. I read his short novel Hunger. It's one of my favorites. In a way, it's similar to Dostoevsky. George Bernard Shaw was a playwright, and incidentally, I went to a university which was founded by Bernard Shaw in London, and there's a small library in the university where I used to go to take a nap. It was a very quiet place, and there was a sofa. Yeah, nobody would disturb you. So it's called the Shaw Library. Henri Bergson, he was a philosopher. He was not a novelist, and he influenced a great many novelists. Proust, Thomas Mann. So his philosophy of time is very interesting. He talks about inner time. Maybe in the future I'll make a video talking about his philosophy of time. Got Thomas Mann, he's the father of German literature, at least in 20th century, and I reviewed The Magic Mountain. Oh, we've got a Finn, so he's probably the only Finnish to win the Nobel Prize. And then 1940 to 1943, yeah, because of the wars. Hermann Hesse, I want to read Siddhartha. Okay, William Faulkner, I read As I Lay Dying, which I included in my video, Top 20 American Novels of All Time. Bertrand Russell, another philosopher, and he famously talked about not working too hard. I think he ended up living like for 350 years like a tortoise. Maybe not 350 years. How long did he live? Yeah, he lived from, 98 years. Oh, That's pretty long. Okay, who else? Churchill. Yeah, he's very unusual on this list. He was a British Prime Minister during the war, so he's famous for his speeches. But he was also a novelist. I think a lot of people don't know. He also wrote some novels. Ernest Hemingway, yeah, I read 2 of his books, and my favorite is The Old Man in the Sea, and I included in my top 20 American novels of all time. Okay, Halldór Laxness from Iceland. I reviewed his novel Independent People, and I think Iceland is probably the smallest country to be on this list. I think a country of 300,000 people. So the odds of winning a Nobel Prize is very high if you're from Iceland. Okay, Albert Camus, I included The Stranger in my top 20 French novels of all time. Boris Pasternak is one of the authors that I would like to read, especially Dr. Zhivago. And incidentally, I think he was forced by the Soviet regime not to accept it because the Nobel Prize was considered ideological for the Soviets. Ivo Andrić, I read his masterpiece, The Bridge on Drina. It's a really fantastic novel, and it's really unique because the bridge is the main character, depicts the history of the region from the point of view of one bridge, still standing for 350 years. John Steinbeck of Mice and Men, which I included in my top 20 American novels. Jean-Paul Sartre, he was a philosopher, but he also wrote one novel, I think, Nausea. He's probably the first person who refused to accept the Nobel Prize because he thought the Nobel Prize was part of the establishment. Mikhail Sholokhov, I want to read his novels and kind of in the shadow of the big 19th century authors of Russia. Yeah, Miguel Angel Asturias, I would like to read his novel, The President. It's a novel from Guatemala. Yasunori Kawabata is the first Japanese to win in 1968, and he's my favorite Japanese writer. And I talked about 2 of his books, Snow Country in my top 10 Japanese novels, and The Izu Dancer, a short story, which is really beautiful. And Samuel Beckett, he wrote in French some of his plays because he thought English was stifling for him. And his famous play is Waiting for Godot, which is like about nothing, so nothing happens. It's quite interesting. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I included his famous novel Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich in my top 10 Russian novels. He suffered a lot, spent years in the Gulag of Siberia. Heinrich Bull, I read one of his novels, The Lost Honor of Katharina Blum. It's one of my favorite German novels. Saul Bellow, I tried to read his novel Herzog, but I can't finish it for some reason. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the best Colombian writer. I reviewed 100 Years of Solitude here. It's one of the best Latin American novels of all time. William Golding, I read his novel Lord of the Flies, and very gloomy, very dark and pessimistic. Najib Mahfouz, the first Arab, I think, to win the Nobel Prize. And I read his Cairo trilogy and I reviewed it here. He's considered the Proust of Egypt, and he writes about passage of time and different generations of the same family. Okay, Nadine Gordimer, the first South African to win, I guess. And I read her novel The Conservationist about apartheid South Africa. It's about white landowner and the black people. So it's a great novel. Derek Walcott, St. Lucia is probably smaller than Iceland, so I have to check actually, because Iceland's got about 300,000 people, so St. Lucia is probably smaller. Perhaps your odds of winning a Nobel Prize is better if you go to a small island like St. Lucia. Toni Morrison, I included her novel Beloved in my top 20 American novels. Kenzaburo Oe, I discussed his novel A Personal Manta in my top 10 Japanese novels. Jose Saramago, I reviewed his novel Blindness. It's one of those novels that you enjoy some parts, but I didn't really enjoy the story because it's too dark, too gloomy, too dystopian for me. Günter Grass, yeah, he writes in the magic realism style, and Tin Drum is a great novel actually. It's about a boy who refuses to grow up. People. Orhan Pamuk, I read one of his books, Snow. He writes like 19th century Russian writers about East versus West. For Turkey, I picked another writer, Yashar Kemal, and his novel, Mehmet My Hawk. And Mehmet My Hawk is one of my favorite novels of all time. And yeah, Pamuk writes great stories too. Doris Lessing, yeah, I read one of her novels called The Golden Notebook. And it's about the modern woman, how fragmented we feel, pulled in different directions. And I think she's the oldest recipient of Nobel Prize. I think she was 88 when she won it. Rudyard Kipling was the youngest to win. Mario Vargas Llosa, I reviewed his novel On Julia and Scriptwriter. It's really funny, and I really enjoyed reading it. It's a novel for a writer, so if you want to be a writer, yeah, definitely read that. Mo Yan, yeah, I read 2 of his novels, The Garlic Ballad and The Red Sorghum. He writes about 20th century China. His language is very beautiful. His writing is very powerful and very vivid. Bob Dylan, yeah, this was a bit unusual. He was surprised himself. Kazuo Ishiguro is one of my favorite contemporary writers, and I talked about him in his style, his novels, and also compared him to Haruki Murakami. Okay, let's talk about the countries. So as you can see, France got the highest. That's not surprising because it's got a very long literary tradition. So it goes back to like 14th, 15th century. So it's got a very artistic history, and most of the writers were innovators. And United States, 13th, pretty good. United Kingdom, Germany, Europe. And then Japan 2, South Africa 2, Egypt, yeah, the only Egyptian to win the Nobel. India 1, I guess it's Tagore. Mauritius, that's interesting. And 1 Mexican. Okay, let's look at the language. Yeah, English dominates, 29. I think 32 because some writers wrote in 2 different languages, like Russian in English or Bengali in English, like Tagore wrote in both. French, 15, and German. So European languages. Chinese 2, Japanese 2, Arabic 1. Okay, no Persian, no Hindi. Male, female, yeah. Men, 101, 16 female. So to win the Nobel Prize, here are the 3 criteria. You have to be born in France. That's number 1. Second, you have to write in English. And third, you have to be a man. So if you check those 3 boxes, you have got a highest chance. Also, I should point out that you have to be alive to win it. Because in 1931, he was awarded posthumously. So in 1970s, they changed the rule that they only award if you're alive. You can't win it if you're dead. So to win it, you have to be French or European. And you have to write in a European language, and you have to be a man. So those are the criteria. And one more thing I should point out, that it's also quite political, because one of my favorite writers of the 20th century, the Argentine Jorge Luis Borges, he didn't win precisely because of his politics. He openly supported the fascist Spain and fascism in South America. And also, Nikos Kazantzakis, the Greek writer who wrote Zorba the Greek, one of my favorite novels of this year, he didn't win in either. He was nominated a few times, but he didn't win it.